Good morning, fans of the new network. It is James Ernest here with Brian Vander Ark. He's our guest. He is the lead singer, co-founder, and principal songwriter of the Verve Pipe. We're excited to talk about the origins of the band, the discography, and the current tour. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. That's quite a title you gave me. I appreciate that.
Oh, heck yeah. It's just, we're excited about having you on. Always enjoyed listening to your music when I was growing up, and it's a real treat.
Thank you.
Do you have things that were do you do that thing where you point to your hand since you're from Michigan?
We all do that. That's something you learn when you learn that before you learn how to talk. I knew that before I was potty trained. Of course, that's not saying much for me and my potty training ability. Yeah. So you do that and you say, hey, wait, do I
Yeah,
have that right? Looking the wrong way. No, which way the mitten go? Is that correct? Does that look
that
like mitten?
seems right. Yeah, I was going to say I know it from the Detroit, the
Yeah, it's
Motor
down
City
here.
Machine Guns. Yeah, yeah, down there.
But we
But
don't venture down there much. We're over in this area here. We like to go up and over here and then up in the UP, which would be that way.
mhm,
But we get down in Detroit once a year or so. So
nice. So, who are some of your musical influences growing up in Michigan?
I think the beginning was all were all the singer-songwriters, the James Taylors and Harry Chapins and Cat Stevens, all the guys at Fingerpick, because I wanted to play acoustic guitar. I love the sound of the acoustic, and so I wanted to learn how to fingerpick. My buddy taught me how to play how to fingerpick Dust in the Wind, I think it was, classic rock tune by Kansas. And once I did that, I got to go back to those old albums that I grew up with and pick up the needle on the record and listen for a couple seconds and go back and listen and go back to try to figure out the James Taylor riffs. And turns out James Taylor now has a website with all of his, he gives
Mhm.
guitar lessons, I think, for free, which are awesome. Um, and surprisingly, I play a lot of them correctly. So I would say all the finger picking people were very influential. Then as I got older, I was much more into the new wave stuff. What was considered new wave then was the Police and Elvis Costello um, and those all those bands I've stuck with all these years. So.
I understand you and Will Ferrell have something in common, at least his character from Talladega Nights, because in that he prays to baby Jesus. I understand that you pray to sweet baby James Jesus.
Yeah, where did you hear about that? No, when I was a kid, my Sunday school teacher, by the way, I'm an atheist, so this is all, it's all going to be moot anyway. But when I was a kid, I was very heavily into the Christian Reformed Church. We went to church twice on Sundays and once on Wednesdays. Um, and my kindergarten Sunday school teacher, I believe, she wanted us to have a personal relationship with Jesus, and said, put a face on him, somebody famous that you really like. And she said her Jesus was Donny Osmond, um, and so she would have conversations with Donny Osmond. My Jesus was James Taylor. So sweet baby James Jesus was something I would say all the time, and it was kind of a curse word. It was fun to say,
Mhm.
when you're like, when I was a kid, peanut butter and jelly in the same jar, sweet baby James Jesus. What are they going to think of next? You know what I mean? Uh, and yeah, frankly, I got my mouth washed out with soap for a couple of those. But to this day, I still exclaim "Sweet baby James Jesus" when I'm upset or something. It's just kind of to be funny. So that's it.
It's hard to believe that it was all the way back in August of '92, but how did the Verve hype get started?
There were a couple bands that were at the top tier in Michigan. I mean, not the top tier. I mean, we're not talking about Bob Seger, Ted Nugent. We're talking about young bands in the '90s who played all the same clubs around Michigan. You just do a circuit. You go to all the universities, Michigan State University, U of M, Ferris State, Eastern Michigan. There were so many colleges here about an hour away from each other. So you just make the circuit. And we got super popular. My band, Johnny with an I, was the name of the band. And there was another band called Water for the Pool, and they were really popular too. And so I just thought, what's going to be best? I have all these songs that I'd written. I said, let's put these two bands together and form a supergroup and take the best members. And I took my brother Brad with me, who's a phenomenal bass player. And then two of the guys from Water for the Pool came on board. And that's how it started, just by combining our fan base. We had maybe 4,000 people on our mailing list, which was a physical address mailing list where you would send out, mailer postcards every month. And they had probably the same. So, right away we had upwards of 10,000, 15,000 fans in Michigan. And then when the album came out, the first album, I think the album came out before we played our first show, or was at least coming out. Um, we sold 15,000 copies really quickly, which is unheard of for a local band at that time, especially.
Was that the I've suffered a head injury?
I've suffered a head injury, yeah. So our band, the Johnny with an I band, had already recorded most of the record, but we just went in and took the new drummer and had him play all those songs, and then put a couple of the Water for the Pool songs on there as well. Now, when the band got signed to RCA, we took a couple of those songs off from our old guitarist who was in the band for about 4 months. We took his songs off and we paid him off, and so now the release has 7 songs on it and not 10. In fact, that first version had the Freshman on it, an acoustic version of the Freshman, but we stripped that off too because we were going to redo it for RCA.
What did you learn from your time with Johnny with an I?
Well, you learn how to be a band. First of all, you learn that it's either a well, in our case, either a patriarchy or it's a you know or it's a democratic thing. I was always a firm believer that everybody had a voice. We were all equal partners. That didn't work. I figured that out. I took some of that attitude with me to the Verve Pipe, where it should be democracy, where we all vote on the songs we like. But that didn't work either. We hardly ever got anything done. We did make a very successful record through the democratic process, but over the years, I've learned that it's nice to have one person in charge. But yeah, early days, Johnny with an I, the most valuable lesson was how to be in a band and how to work with other musicians that come from a different place where you came from musically. That's the great thing about a really good band is that everybody comes from slightly different places musically, and you might have a you know, common fandom in bands like XTC or the Beatles, and then you find that common ground, and then you start writing your own songs with other members. That was a very valuable experience in Johnny with an I. And to learn that my brother was a great bass player. I hadn't really known him then. He's 5 years younger, and my mom suggested that I put him in the band because he was kind of floundering about. And he did, and I realized how great he was. So, still our bass player to this day.
That is awesome that you were able to build such a strong connection with your brother off of your combined passion for music.
Yeah, it's true. And he's my favorite brother. I like all my brothers equally. Brad and I have a relationship less than brothers, more like friends who, bicker at each other every once in a while, whatever.
So how does it feel to be making music still after 30 years?
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that the songs keep coming. I'm grateful that I feel like, lyrically speaking, we've set the bar with the Freshman as a storytelling song, a linear story, and great lyrics. We set that bar, and I've been able to maintain that for 30 years now. Lyrics are still very important to me. I struggle over lyrics, struggle over concepts, lyrical concepts, how to make words work, what a better line would be always. What is this the right word to use here, or is there a better word that fits better, fits more like a puzzle piece within the melody? That's always a challenge, but if I were rewriting songs like The Freshman or Photograph or Colorful over and over and over, I'd be bored out of my skull. So I've been able to come up with new concepts, having Channing Lee in the band. She's an amazing lyricist that we picked up 10 years ago on the strength of her songwriting because I knew I was going to need help eventually. She and I think, are fantastic lyricists together. It's worked great, and the new album is no exception.
So it seems like the band really has changed and evolved from the early days of I suffered a head injury, and it just has keeps progressing and keeps improving.
I appreciate that. I hope it's an improvement. I feel like it's an improvement. I feel like we're a much better band than we were in the 90s. I think we're better songwriters. I think the live performance is fantastic. We have spectacular moments in the live show that people walk away and seem to be wowed by. Um, we are, I'm kind of a business guy too. I mean, and we're up 40, 50% on our gigs this year than we had last year. And that's just a testament to, demand, which is awesome. It's fantastic. We believe that from, people that, get a babysitter and, drive an hour or two to a venue and wait to see a band and, you need to wow them. You need to be super entertaining. We're not one of those shoegazer bands. We care. We want people to be entertained. We want to engage. We want them to engage with us. Um, so I'm thrilled at the way the trajectory has gone over the years. And again, if we were putting out the same song over and over, we wouldn't have that. If we didn't continue to write great songs and put on a great live show, we wouldn't have that either. So everything is, knock on wood, everything has been going great. When it stops going great, when the well runs dry lyrically and musically, and when we've run out of interesting things to do on stage, that's when it's time to retire. But I haven't come anywhere near that yet, I don't think, thankfully.
Definitely. I was gonna say, I mean, to me, that sounds like success when you're able to do what you love for a living, and it sounds like you've been able to do that for the, over 30 years now. But I understand that bands and then labels have different ideals of success. What is the
Sure.
main difference in their ideology?
Well, of course, I mean, now it's a little bit different than it was in the 90s because of record sales and streaming and the whole, difference in the internet. Um, I mean, there was barely an. When we got signed. Um, I would say that the difference is that labels are going to look for a huge impact right away, and hope that their band can continue to put out successful records. With us, it was a pretty substantial amount of time before we were successful. I was 32 when we finally got signed. So I had played all the clubs, done all the thing. I felt like I paid my dues. Most of the guys in the band had paid their dues. In fact, all of them had. Um, and I think that there's the longevity, the long run. In the long run, we're much more successful than we were in that moment in 1997 when the freshman was number one. We're more successful now because it's consistent. It's consistent and consistent and consistent. We're perpetuating continuously on the road where there were a lot of slow years where that wasn't happening. I figured out now running the business on our own away from a record label has made us much more successful. And even though we might not be on the tip of everyone's tongue, um, and we're not selling out arenas, we're still very successful in the fact that we get to make the music that we want to make. We put out music when we want to put it out. We play shows when we want to, and we don't play shows if we don't want to. I mean, what could be more, how could you be more successful? When we were
Exactly.
at the
You could
top of
be
the
your own boss.
charts, yeah, when we were at the top of the charts, it was like, you got to travel the world, yeah, but you didn't see anything because you went from venue to venue to venue to venue. And then the days that you had off, or during the day when you were off, you did interviews, 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 interviews. Got to be here, got to be there, got to be there, this and that. Miserable life. Honestly, it was very miserable. That seems like, um, that seems, I don't mean to sound, what's the word? Entitled. I don't mean to sound like I didn't appreciate the success, but I feel like now this is a way I want to live my life. I didn't want to live my life like that back then. It was too exhausting. And it just made everybody mad at each other and grumpy and ornery. And, of course, we were heavily into, you know, alcohol and drugs back then as well. So that doesn't help. And now that we've realized, that you can entertain, and I can still go home and have a family and have my kids and raise my kids, much more successful.
I've always enjoyed Lawrence Carroll's style videos, his Long December, Lazy Eye, and then You Were Meant for Me. How much did it mean to you to have such a great director directing Photograph?
Of course, it was huge for me. He was the creative or artistic director on Smells Like Teen Spirit. So the first time you see, that kind of 90s look, if you remember what that look was like when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out by Nirvana, like a very dark, artistic look. Uh, you go, well, that's, of course he's going to be a video director. And when he directed Photograph, I think he had only directed a couple of other videos at that point. But he went on to direct, Long December, which is a great video. I think King of New Orleans is a great video that he did as well by Better Than Ezra. Lawrence was a friend for years. He directed our video for our song called Overboard that came out in I want to say 2015. He directed that, and it's gorgeous, and he didn't charge me anything for it. I had to just pay for the crew and stuff. And he's been a great friend ever since. In fact, he's a, he's a painter as well. Let me see if I can, he just passed away a few years ago, by the way, which is unfortunate, but he's, an artist, and he made that for me, and
Wow.
I was so honored to have that. And the guy's a world-renowned artist, and I've got an original piece by him that he did for me. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for working with Lawrence. He was the best video director we'd ever worked with.
Sounds like it was a remarkable experience.
It was, really was.
I'm impressed by your commitment to your fans. What was the lawn chair and living room house concert series like?
I mean, over 800 concerts. I started in 2008 out of necessity because the band wasn't really doing anything. We were stalled. We put out a couple of kids records, and that went pretty good, but I knew I didn't want to continue doing that. So I want to get back to the people. I wanted to get back to the fans. And so I just said, book me into your home. And, a lot of people do house concerts, but what I did was I did as many as I could in a day. So I would do three or
Wow.
four a day on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I'd do 7 or 8 over the weekend. I'd go from one to the next. So we would limit it to a 1 hour show, and then a 1 hour of me hanging around and just taking pictures and signing autographs. And I teach some kids their kids how to play guitar a little bit.
Cool.
Of course. No, it was a lot of fun. So the whole experience was 2 hours long, but it was cut off at 2 hours because I had to drive to the next one
Yeah.
or fly to the next one. And we got it down to a science where it was an inexpensive concert. It was because if I booked one show in St. Louis, I would say the price is this much for me to fly to St. Louis to play this. But hold your horses. If I can get two or three more people to get me in St. Louis, your price is going to come down.
Oh,
And it worked great. I mean, people got shows, my manager will kill me if I quote prices, but for the price of an appliance, you
oh
know,
wow.
major appliance in your home, people got shows for that. And it was a win-win for me because I sold a lot of t-shirts and merchandise, signed up a ton of people on the mailing list. It really built the career back up where when the Verve Pipe did finally get it together again and start making records, we could afford everything. We could afford to do it without signing our souls to a record label.
You mentioned the family albums. I was intrigued by those, but I understand the problem with the family albums wasn't the kids, they were great, but I understand the parents could be a pain in the neck sometimes.
Well, uh, I mean, the parents had the disposable income, so the parents bought all the t-shirts. I can't say anything. I think the only bad thing about the parents is if you play a show, uh, and we learned this in the beginning, we would do a skit and then we would, a pre-written skit and play a song and the whole thing. And kids they don't care about the skits or anything, they just want to hear the music and they want to be up and dancing. So I used to say that. I used to say, well, if the kids got bored during the show, then they don't want to be there and then the parents are upset. So we learned that early on that when you play a kids show, you have to be on every song. Boom, 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 boom. It's got to be so spectacular and entertaining for an hour. And we tried to do that and then do rock shows for the adults at night. And I got to tell you, man, even though I used to do 4 or 5 concerts a day on, house concerts, that was the most exhausting thing doing the kids shows. So that was the only complaint I ever think I had about parents. I think in the end too, when I was tired of doing it and I said something like, "Oh, you mother fathers, get out there to wear merchandise or whatever." And I could just see people thinking I'm gonna say motherfuckers. Uh, but it made me laugh and it made the band laugh. And I think there were some upset parents, but regardless.
It, so I've always wondered, was it your ability to work with soundtracks? Like for example, Rockstar or Joe Somebody, or was it your experience with Jeff Daniels that inspired your passion for acting?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to go that way with it. Great, good question. No, I'd always been interested in acting ever since I was a kid. I was in plays and everything, and ironically, I wasn't in any musicals at all. Um, I always enjoyed acting, and so when we first signed to RCA, I had met some filmmakers, some young filmmakers, Matt Lutweiler, who made a movie called Dead and Breakfast, and a couple other movies that he asked me to be in. Um, and these are all B movies, but super fun. So that's where the acting chops came from, just doing that kind of thing. And then when I got Rockstar, I had to audition for it, and I got the part. And then, the concentration went back to I had a chance to be on Broadway doing Jersey Boys
Ooh.
before Jersey Boys was a hit. Yeah, the casting director asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, and I was just putting out my first solo record, and I said, no, I'm gonna concentrate on this. As a decision I don't regret. I would have loved to have done, Jersey Boys, but the music was more my thing. My concentration, was there. So,
Definitely. And then what was that experience like with Jeff Daniels?
you mean doing the album, writing the
Yeah.
album? Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, he's been a friend for years. Just a great guy. And, he's one of those guys that has awesome parenting advice. For me, he's about 10 years older than I am. Uh, Sometimes I feel like his little brother. It's nice to have a big brother like that. And we've done Yeah, we made an album together. We did a couple of Verve Pipe songs together. Then we made Simple Truths together, which was a lot of fun. And great songs on there. He's a terrific musician. People don't realize how good he is. He's very, very good. And he's a great writer too. So
You mentioned earlier about how now you kind of stop and smell the roses and you experience things and enjoy them while you're doing them. You got that big cruise coming up, summer of '99 and beyond. How
yeah,
excited are you to not just perform, but to just enjoy the cruise?
it's gonna be awesome. I mean, I'm taking my daughter on the second one. I'm taking my friend, filmmaker friend Devin Gummersall on the first one. Um, And, the fact that I get to hang with all of our old buddies from the 90s, Creed and Tonic and Vertical Horizon and, all these bands that, we were all part of that class of the late 90s. It's going to be amazing. And we get to play three shows. I think everybody plays three shows. We get to go to the Bahamas, get to be on a nice cruise and, VIPs. It's going to be awesome. So grateful that we get to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Two of them now, too. First
Oh,
one
nice.
sold out in 24 hours or something, which
Oh, wow.
amazed all of us. Not that we didn't expect it to sell, but just wow, 24 hours, man. People
Yeah.
really want to see that bunch of bands. It's a great group of bands that are going. So,
Yeah. Because I mean, heck, it's not like they're just buying a concert ticket. They're really investing to be able to do that. Wow. I mean, that is phenomenal how fast that went.
yeah.
How has your perspective on the music industry changed over time?
Um, the biggest change is the death of the album or the perceived death of the album. And that had to do with iTunes, the idea that you could buy individual tracks instead of buying a whole album. I still feel like it goes back to the artists. The fact that albums used to have so much filler on them. Like there'd be one good song from a band and the rest would be crappy, but you're forced to buy the entire album. I still think that some of the blame should be put on the artists. Uh, but the death of the album, again, the perceived death of the album, uh, was so disappointing up to a certain point where I realized, well, why don't we just put out albums still and put songs in the order we want? And the fact that vinyl came back the way it did really is a testament that people still enjoy albums and still enjoy the process of listening to it, the whole experience of music, rather than, for instance, I've got young kids, my 13-year-old and my 8-year-old. I don't play music in the house. We rarely have music playing in the house. Now, my daughter will play music in the car constantly, but again, she's in the car and she's experiencing it. We're not one of those people who just have the Sonos speakers everywhere and constant rotation of music because you're not really honoring the music then, I like to sit and listen to an album. I like to sit and listen to a song with the headphones on and really honor it. And I think that's what vinyl does. And I think that's the biggest change, like I said, in the music industry, but we've adapted to it. Um, and I guess that's probably it.
I mean, you're so synonymous with the music aspect, but I understand that you have some really great speaking engagements. What topics do you cover during those?
Letting go of your ego is a big topic. Leave your ego at the door. I learned a lot about my own ego and how enormous it was in the 90s and how that was such a detriment to me. And I hadn't realized it at the time. But also, the story, the trajectory of the band is one where it's a real lesson. We had a couple albums that we were very successful, and then we signed to a major label, had a huge album, and then we did what every band does, the classic move. We way overspent on the next record, $1 million to put out the next record. The follow-up didn't have a hit song on it. Comeback album was going to come out, and we had a song on the charts called Never Let You Down. It was like number 22 with a bullet. We had a song in the movie Rockstar called Colorful. Everything was working our way for a huge comeback in 2001, and our release date was 9/11. So you just go, well, what can you do? That was just bad luck. And so that's all part of the speaking series. How do you come back from that kind of thing? So,
It's funny. I had another band that had the same release date as you all, Soil. Their band or their album also came out on 9/11, and gosh, obviously that dramatically impacted both of you all on that experience.
sorry, I've got a little bit of a focus issue now. There we go.
No
Did I get
worries, Brian. It's all good.
there we go.
But yeah, we've enjoyed having you on this show. It has been a pleasure. I enjoyed checking out your website. You got some really great content on there. Before we let you go, where on social media, where on the web, where can we find out more about you?
The best place to find me and find the band is, we're very active on Instagram, TikTok. We're pretty active. Some of the TikTok content's super funny, and I enjoy doing TikTok. Facebook page, typical places. We're very fan friendly. We answer all our emails. If you email us through the websites, we'll answer your emails. We'll answer your comments, anything online. So that's the best place.
That is awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good talking to you.